The winter morning arrived without mercy, as all winter mornings do in the kingdom of Ironwood. Snow fell in sheets across the battlements, covering the scars of 40 years' worth of conquest like a shroud over a corpse. Alpha King Alaric Ironwood stood on the balcony of his tower, watching his empire die with the same quiet dignity he had once watched it rise. His scent, once the powerful musk of a dominant alpha in his prime, had begun to fade. The cancer was eating away at more than just his body. It was consuming the very essence that marked him as alpha, the pheromone signature that had once commanded instant submission from lesser wolves. Now, on particularly bad days, he could barely project authority beyond his own chambers. 61 years. That was all the time a man got to build something, to destroy something, to become something he never intended to be. The physician said he had 6 months left. The cancer in his blood was spreading like ink through water, inevitable and complete. He wondered if this was what justice looked like when it finally arrived, patient and unstoppable, dressed in cellular rebellion rather than righteous fury. The wind cut through his fur-lined cloak, but he did not move. Pain had become his constant companion these past months. He had learned to wear it like armor, the way he had once worn the weight of his crown. Below him, the capital city of Ironwood stretched toward the horizon, its streets empty in the pre-dawn cold. Smoke rose from 1,000 chimneys, each one representing a family trying to survive another day in a kingdom that had spent its strength on wars that accomplished nothing except filling graveyards. People die. Empires die. Alphas die. These were truths he had always known, but understanding them in theory and feeling them in your bones were entirely different educations. Behind him, footsteps approached across the stone floor. Heavy, deliberate. The gait of another alpha, one whose power had not yet begun to wane. Alaric caught the scent before the man spoke, recognizing the cedar and steel notes that had been familiar for 40 years. Grand Duke Tiberius Ashford stopped beside him, silent for a long moment. They had stood together like this 1,000 times over 4 decades, on battlefields, in throne rooms, at graves, 2 old wolves watching the world change around them, wondering when their time would come. It had come. Alaric spoke first, his voice carrying the gravel of too many years shouting commands across blood-soaked fields. "Your news will not improve with waiting, old friend." Tiberius exhaled slowly, his breath visible in the frozen air. Even in this, the Duke maintained perfect control. His scent never wavered, never betrayed emotion. A lifetime of court politics had taught him to mask everything. The physicians confirmed it. 6 months, perhaps less. Your alpha essence is degrading along with your body. Within 3 months, you will not be able to project dominance at all. 6 months. Alaric tested the words in his mind, rolling them around like stones. 6 months to undo 40 years of mistakes. The mathematics of it would have been laughable if it were not so desperately tragic. And my son? Tiberius turned to look at him for the first time. The Duke's face was carved from years of difficult decisions and impossible loyalties. Whatever softness had once existed there had been ground away by time and circumstance. Prince Demon was found in the lower city again. Drunk, gambling away what little credit remains to the royal treasury. He has 4 bastards now, all by Omega women he refuses to bond with properly, none of them suitable for recognition. His scent when drunk reeks of shame and wasted potential. Alaric closed his eyes. Of all the failures in his life, and there were legions of them, Demon stood as perhaps the most personal. A son raised in the shadow of a tyrant, given everything except the one thing he actually needed. Love, guidance, a father who was present for more than just parades and promotions. "The boy is 38 years old," Tiberius continued. "He is not going to change, not in 6 months, not in 6 years. His alpha nature is corrupted, weak. He cannot hold a pack bond, cannot inspire loyalty. The moment you die, the kingdom will tear itself apart under his rule. Then what do you propose?" What Tiberius said next would alter the trajectory of everything that remained. Not just for Alaric, not just for Ironwood, but for the very concept of what redemption could look like when time itself had run out. "There is another option, unconventional. Some would call it obscene." Alaric opened his eyes, studying his oldest friend with the intensity of a man who had very little time left to waste on pleasantries. He caught something in Tiberius's scent. Calculation. guilt. And underneath, something that smelled like old ash and buried secrets. Say it. Elara Moonshade. She is 24 now, an Omega, unmarked, unbonded. I have kept watch over her these many years. The name hit Alaric like a blade between the ribs. Moonshade. He had not heard that name spoken aloud in his presence for more than 2 decades. It existed in his mind as a monument to his greatest sin, the one crime that haunted him more than all the others combined. 25 years ago, he had destroyed the Moonshade clan, completely, systematically. Lord Marcus Moonshade, who had once saved his life in battle, had been accused of treason. The evidence had seemed irrefutable. Plans to assassinate the king, secret correspondence with enemy kingdoms, gold transferred to foreign accounts. Alaric had not hesitated. He had ridden to the Moonshade estate with 300 soldiers, and he had burned it to the ground. Marcus had died with a sword in his hand, fighting to the last. His wife, a gentle Omega, whose scent had always reminded Alaric of spring rain, had died trying to shield their infant daughter. He could still smell the smoke sometimes, still hear the screams, still see the way Marcus's eyes had held not anger, but betrayal as the blade pierced his heart. All of them had died, except one. The infant. 6 months old. Elara. Alaric had picked her up from her mother's corpse and held her in his arms while the estate burned around them. The baby had looked at him with eyes too knowing for an infant, and he had made a decision that had felt righteous at the time, but now felt like the action of a coward. He let her live. Not out of mercy, out of pride. He told himself he would raise her in obscurity, and when she was old enough to understand, he would bring her before him and tell her the truth. He would look into her eyes and say the words that justified everything. Your father was a traitor. I had no choice. I do not regret it. But he had never done it. He had sent her away to a remote village with coin enough to ensure her care. He had ordered Tiberius to watch over her from a distance, to make sure she survived, but never to interfere. And then he had tried to forget her. He had failed at that too. You kept her alive, Alaric said slowly, the words tasting like ash. I kept her alive. Why? Tiberius was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that suggested he had been waiting years to say these words. And his scent shifted subtly, taking on notes of something that smelled like regret mixed with determination. Because some debts cannot be repaid, only transformed. Alaric turned to face him fully now, reading the lines of his friend's face the way he had learned to read terrain before a battle. There was something else here, something Tiberius was not saying. What are you proposing? Take her as your mate, bond with her properly, produce an heir, a legitimate heir with the mark and the bond to prove it. One last chance to secure the succession. One last chance to give this dying kingdom something other than demons' incompetence. The audacity of it was staggering. The cruelty of it was even worse. She is the daughter of the man I killed. Yes, an Omega whose family I destroyed. She would sooner rip out my throat than accept my mark. Perhaps. Or perhaps she would see the same mathematics you do. A kingdom cannot survive without leadership. Her people, the people of this land, they need stability. They need hope. What they do not need is Prince Demon drinking away the treasury while the borders collapse. Alaric studied the falling snow, watching individual flakes lose themselves in the collective white. Each one distinct until it was not. Each one mattering until it did not. Why would she agree? Because I will ask her to. And because she is smarter than both of us. She has lived 24 years knowing what you did to her family. She has had time to understand that revenge is a luxury the powerless cannot afford. But influence? The chance to shape what comes next? That is something else entirely. Omega she may be, but her mind is sharper than most alphas I know. You speak as if you know her mind. I have watched her grow from a distance. She reads, she thinks, she understands power in ways that would surprise you. When I tell her what is at stake, she will see the opportunity for what it is, which is the chance to ensure that her father's line does not end in obscurity, the chance to birth a ruler who will inherit Ironwood but carry Moonshade blood, the chance to win without a sword what could never be won with one, and perhaps, if she is as wise as I think, the chance to transform you into something better than what you have been. Alaric felt something twist in his chest. It might have been pain. It might have been something worse. This is monstrous. Yes, I would be using her. just another way, taking an unbonded Omega and forcing a mark she never chose. The bond cannot be forced, as you well know. She would have to accept it willingly, and that acceptance, if it comes, will be her choice. She deserves better than to be a broodmare for her family's killer. She deserves many things she will never receive. We all do. But what she can receive is this, a choice, a genuine choice. I will present it to her honestly. No lies, no manipulation. She can refuse. But if she accepts, it will be with full knowledge of what it means. The wind howled across the balcony, carrying with it the scent of smoke and snow and the peculiar emptiness of winter mornings in a dying kingdom. Alaric thought about time, how much he had wasted, how little remained, how the past could never be undone, but perhaps it could be transformed into something that served the future. He thought about his son, drunk in some tavern, his alpha scent corrupted by weakness and self-pity, pissing away what little remained of their legacy. He thought about the wars he had fought, the people he had killed, the empire he had built on bones and broken promises. He thought about what would happen when he was gone and Demon inherited the throne. How long before civil war? How long before the neighboring kingdoms saw their chance and descended like wolves on a wounded deer? Not long. He thought about Elara Moonshade, 24 years old, an Omega who had never known her parents, who had been raised by strangers, who had been told stories about her father that painted him as either a traitor or a martyr depending on who was speaking. What kind of woman had she become? What kind of rage did she carry? What kind of intelligence? And what would her scent be like? Would it carry notes of her mother's spring rain, or would it be something entirely her own? Tiberius was right about one thing. This was monstrous. But perhaps monsters were the only ones capable of making the choices that needed to be made when all the good options had been exhausted decades ago. "Bring her here," Alaric said finally. "But I will be the one to make the offer. If she is to hate anyone for this, let it be me. I have earned that much." Tiberius nodded slowly, as if some great weight had been confirmed rather than lifted. His scent carried satisfaction mixed with something darker. "You understand what this means? I understand that I am a dying king trying to buy redemption with the body of a woman who has every right to want me dead. I understand that if there is a hell, I have secured my place there 100 times over. But I also understand that Ironwood will not survive Demon. And if my last act is to prevent that, then perhaps my death will serve some purpose beyond escape." Tiberius turned to go, then paused. What he said next, Alaric would not understand the full meaning of until much later. "There is something you should know. About Marcus Moonshade. About the evidence that condemned him." "Yes?" The Duke's scent shifted again, taking on notes of ash and old guilt so strong that even Alaric's fading alpha senses could detect it. "Not yet. First, let us see if she agrees. Some truths are best revealed when the foundation is already built. Otherwise, they destroy everything." "What truth?" Tiberius met his eyes with something that might have been pity or might have been cruelty. With old friends, the line between the two had long since blurred. "All in time, old friend, all in time." Then he was gone, his footsteps fading across the stone, leaving Alaric alone with the snow and the gathering shadows, and a terrible suspicion that Tiberius was hiding something that would change everything. 3 days later, Elara Moonshade arrived. Tiberius brought her at dawn, when the castle was still quiet and the servants had not yet begun their daily routines. Alaric watched from a window as she dismounted from her horse in the courtyard below. Even from a distance, even with his fading alpha senses, he could smell her. The scent hit him like a physical blow. Spring rain, yes, like her mother, but also wild honeysuckle and something sharper, like steel wrapped in silk. An Omega scent. Unmistakably so, but with an underlying strength that spoke of iron will and fierce intelligence. And underneath all of it, something else. Something that made his dying alpha nature stir in recognition. A compatibility so perfect it defied rational explanation. No, it could not be. The universe was not that cruel. But as she looked up at the castle walls, as the wind carried her scent more strongly through the open window, Alaric knew with terrible certainty what this was. True mate. 1 in 10,000 alphas ever found their true mate, and he had found his in the daughter of the man he had murdered, in the woman he was about to ask to bear his child out of political necessity rather than love. The cruelty of it was almost beautiful in its precision. He met them in his private study rather than the throne room. This was not a matter of state. This was something more intimate and infinitely more terrible. The study was warm, a fire burning in the hearth, but the warmth did nothing to ease the ice in his veins. Tiberius entered first, then stepped aside. Elara Moonshade walked in behind him and stopped 3 paces from the door. The moment she entered, her scent filled the room completely. Alaric's fading alpha nature responded involuntarily, his own scent shifting to match hers in the ancient dance of mate recognition. He saw her nostrils flare slightly, saw the moment she registered what was happening. Her eyes widened, just for a second, then she controlled the reaction with iron discipline. She did not bow, she did not lower her eyes. She simply looked at him with an expression that gave away nothing except a fierce, controlled intelligence. And despite everything, despite the horror of their situation, he found himself grateful that his true mate was strong enough to meet him as an equal. They studied each other in silence. Alaric took in the details. She had her mother's eyes, green like spring leaves. But her face was all her father, sharp cheekbones and a stubborn jaw that suggested she did not bend easily. She was slight, as most Omegas were. But there was a coiled tension in her posture that spoke of someone who had learned early that the world was not kind and adaptation was the price of survival. When she spoke, her voice was steady. No tremor, no rage, just a statement of fact, delivered with the same tone one might use to comment on the weather. "You killed my father." "Yes." "My mother." "Yes." "My entire family except me." "Yes." "And now you want me to bear your child." Alaric felt something twist in his chest again. Hearing it said aloud, with such brutal clarity, made the obscenity of it undeniable. And worse, the mate bond was already beginning to form, invisible threads of connection trying to weave themselves between 2 people who should have been mortal enemies. "Yes." She tilted her head slightly, studying him with the intensity of a scholar examining a particularly interesting specimen. He saw her breathe deeply, scenting him deliberately, testing the recognition, confirming what her instincts were already screaming. "True mates," she said softly. "Of course. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. You feel it too. Hard not to. Your scent is calling to mine. My Omega nature wants to submit to your Alpha even though my mind knows exactly what you are. And what am I? The man who murdered my parents. The king who built an empire on bones. The dying wolf trying to secure succession through the daughter of his greatest sin. All accurate." She walked slowly to the window, looking out at the snow-covered courtyard. Tiberius remained by the door, silent, watching. His scent carried satisfaction, as if events were unfolding exactly as he had predicted. "Duke Tiberius told me what you want," Elara said. "An heir, legitimate succession, security for Ironwood. He also told me that your son is a fool and a drunk, and that if he inherits, this kingdom will collapse within a decade." All true. "He told me I have a choice, that I can refuse and return to my life in obscurity, that you will not force a bond I do not want." Also true. "Whatever else I am, I will not force a mate mark. The bond only works with willing acceptance on both sides." She turned to look at him again, and this time there was something different in her expression. Not softness, but calculation. "What he did not tell me is why I should believe any of this. Why should I believe you will honor your word? Why should I believe my child will be safe? Why should I believe this is anything other than another manipulation by an alpha who has built his entire reign on dominance and control?" It was a fair question. More than fair. It was the question of an Omega who had learned young that trust was a luxury she could not afford. Alaric moved to his desk and opened a drawer. Inside was a document he had spent the last 3 days preparing. He placed it on the desk between them. "This is a royal decree. It names any child born of our union as first in line for succession, superseding all other claims, including Prince Demon's. It grants you title as royal consort, with full bonding rights and all attendant powers. It establishes a trust that cannot be touched by anyone except you, funded with enough gold to secure your independence for life, whether the child lives or dies, whether I live or die. It is signed, sealed, and registered with the Council of Elders. It cannot be undone without your consent." Elara picked up the document, reading it carefully. Alaric watched her eyes move across the text, seeing the moment she understood exactly what she was looking at. Her scent shifted subtly, surprise mixing with cautious respect. "This gives me extraordinary power, more than any royal consort has ever held. Yes, you could have written this differently. You could have protected yourself more, limited my authority. I could have, but I did not. Because you asked the right question. Why should you believe me? The answer is this document. I am giving you leverage, real leverage, legal protection that even a dying king cannot revoke. If I betray you, you have the power to destroy what little legacy I have left. That is the only guarantee that matters between enemies. She set the document down, her expression unreadable. But her scent carried thoughtfulness mixed with something that might have been grudging respect. We are enemies then, are we not? She considered this for a long moment. The mate bond hummed between them, invisible but undeniable, trying to pull them together despite the weight of history pushing them apart. I should hate you. I have tried to hate you. For 6 years, since I learned the truth of what happened to my family, I have carried that hate like a stone in my chest. But hate is exhausting, and it accomplishes nothing except its own perpetuation. Then what do you feel? Nothing, which is perhaps worse than hate. You are a stranger who destroyed my family for reasons I will never fully understand. You are a dying king trying to secure succession. You are an old man facing death and realizing that power means nothing when you cannot take it with you. You are all these things, and none of them inspire hate. They inspire pity. The word hit harder than any curse could have. I do not want your pity. And I do not want to be bound to my family's killer. But we rarely get what we want. We get what circumstances allow. And circumstances are offering me something I never thought possible. The chance to see Moonshade blood on the throne of Ironwood. The chance to transform my family's destruction into legacy. That is worth considering. Then you will do it? Elara walked back to the window. When she spoke again, her voice carried a different quality. Not harder, not softer, just more honest. I will do it. But not for you, not for Ironwood, not even for my father's memory, though that is part of it. I will do it because I am 24 years old, and I have lived my entire life as a ghost. No family, no pack, no bond, no mark on this world beyond the simple fact that I survived. If I do this, my child will inherit a kingdom. My blood will sit on a throne. The Moonshade name will be remembered as something other than a cautionary tale about what happens when you cross a king. That is worth 6 months of my life. That is worth accepting a bond I never chose. She turned to face him one last time. But I have conditions. Name them. First, Prince Demon will be removed from succession immediately. Public announcement. No ambiguity. I will not risk my child's life on the chance that your son decides to eliminate competition. Agreed. Second, when our child is born, you will acknowledge publicly that I am your true mate. Not a political arrangement, not a convenience. Your mate. The bond will be visible to anyone with alpha or omega senses anyway, but I want it stated clearly. It protects our child from being dismissed as product of desperation rather than destiny. Agreed. Third, you will begin reforms immediately. Debt forgiveness for war widows, food distribution to the outer provinces, an end to the practice of enslaving prisoners of war. I do not care if you die believing you were righteous, but I will not allow our child to inherit a kingdom built entirely on cruelty. If we are truly mates, if this bond is real, then I will use whatever influence it gives me to change this place. Alaric felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize it. Respect. Deep, genuine respect for this Omega who stood before him with the courage to demand justice from the man who had destroyed her world. You drive a hard bargain. I drive the only bargain that makes this tolerable. Do you accept? I accept. She held out her hand, not in supplication, not in greeting, but in the way one seals a contract between equals. Alaric took her hand. Her fingers were cold from the winter air, but her grip was firm. The moment their skin touched, the mate bond flared to life with shocking intensity. He saw her gasp, felt his own breath catch as the connection snapped into place with force that nearly drove him to his knees. This was different from any bond he had ever heard of. Stronger, more immediate, as if their very souls were recognizing each other and crying out in relief at finally being found. Elara pulled her hand back quickly, breathing hard. Her scent had spiked with arousal and fear in equal measure. His own alpha nature was responding despite the cancer, despite the dying, his body trying to answer the call of his true mate, even though he had neither the strength nor the time to properly honor such a bond. That was, she whispered, more intense than I expected. Yes. The bond, it is already forming. Yes. She looked at him with something that might have been wonder, or might have been horror. How long do we have before it completes? 3 nights, maybe less. True mate bonds accelerate everything. We should perform the bonding ceremony soon. Delay will only make the pull more painful." Tiberius, who had been silent this entire time, finally spoke. His scent carried notes of satisfaction so strong they were almost offensive. "I will prepare the announcements. The decree will be read in the throne room tomorrow. The bonding ceremony will be private. 3 days hence. That gives Lady Elara time to prepare and gives us time to ensure security. Prince Damon will not react well to this news." "No ceremony," Elara said sharply. "No ritual. No pretense of romance. We sign documents. We complete the bond. We create the heir, but we do not play act at love." Alaric found himself almost smiling despite everything. Almost. "As you wish." She pulled her hand back fully, already moving toward the door. But the bond thrummed between them now, a living thing that would only grow stronger with each passing hour. "I will be in the East Wing. Send word when you are ready to proceed with the arrangements." Then she was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of wild honeysuckle and steel wrapped in silk, and the distinct impression that Alaric had just encountered someone far more dangerous than he had anticipated. Tiberius waited until her footsteps had faded before speaking. His scent shifted again, taking on that note of ash and old secrets. "She is extraordinary." "Yes." "You realize she will either save this kingdom or burn it to ash." "Yes." "And you cannot know which." "No. But at least she will make the choice for reasons that matter. That is more than I can say for most of what I have done." Tiberius moved toward the door, then paused. What he said next, he said so quietly that Alaric almost missed it. "The evidence against Marcus Moonshade, the treason, the betrayal." "Yes? It was fabricated, all of it. I know because I helped create it." The words hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Alaric felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. The room spun. Everything he thought he knew, every justification he had built over 25 years, crumbled to dust in an instant. "What?" "The late queen asked me to do it. She was afraid Marcus would replace you. He was young, charismatic, beloved by the people. She saw him as a threat. I agreed because at the time, I believed the same. We created the evidence, letters, financial records, testimony from paid witnesses. We presented it to you knowing exactly what you would do." Alaric could not breathe. His chest was tight, his vision narrowing. 40 years of friendship built on a lie. 25 years of guilt over killing a traitor who had never actually betrayed him. "You let me kill an innocent man." "Yes. You let me slaughter his family. His mate. His child would have died too if I had not made that one choice." "Yes." Tiberius's scent was complex now. Guilt, yes, but also defiance. And something that smelled like old determination not yet satisfied. "Why tell me this now?" "Because you are dying. Because you deserve to know what you actually did before you face whatever comes next. And because if you truly want to make amends, you need to understand the full weight of what you are asking Elara Moonshade to forgive." Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing in the stone corridor. Alaric stood alone in his study, the world tilting on its axis. Marcus Moonshade had been innocent. Elara's father had been innocent. The man who saved his life, who he had repaid with fire and death, had done nothing except be too beloved by the people. And Tiberius had known, had helped manufacture the lie, had stood beside Alaric for 25 years and said nothing. The betrayal was almost beautiful in its completeness. Alaric sank into his chair, feeling every one of his 61 years pressing down on him. The cancer in his blood seemed like mercy now, like the universe's way of saying enough. You have done enough damage, time to go. But he could not go. Not yet. He had made promises to Elara, promises that mattered even more now that he knew the true depth of his crime against her family. 3 days. He had 3 days before the bonding ceremony. 3 days to figure out how to tell his true mate that her father had died for nothing, that the man she was bound to had murdered innocents based on lies told by people he trusted. 3 days to decide whether redemption was even possible, or if some sins were simply too great to ever be transformed into anything except more pain. Outside, snow continued to fall over the kingdom of Ironwood. The city slept, the empire creaked under the weight of its own dying, and in a castle room far from the king's chamber, a young woman stood by her window, one hand on her belly, feeling the mate bond pulse with new life, wondering if the child she might already be carrying would be strong enough to survive the legacy both its parents were leaving behind. The winter had only just begun, but spring, if it came at all, would bring changes that none of them could yet imagine. And in the shadows between truth and lies, between guilt and redemption, between the bond that called them together and the history that should have torn them apart, something new was being born, something that might save them all, or destroy everything they had left. 2 weeks passed before Alaric understood that the mate bond was not just connecting them emotionally, but fundamentally altering the architecture of his dying. The physicians confirmed it on a gray morning when frost covered the windows like accusations made visible. Elara was pregnant. The child had taken root with impossible speed, as happened with true mate pairings. What should have taken months of trying had occurred in a single night. Their biology recognized what their minds were still struggling to accept. The royal physician, a man named Corvus, who had served 3 generations of Ironwood kings and was himself a rare beta with the ability to sense bonds, looked at Alaric with an expression that mixed professional curiosity with something approaching awe. "The bond is fully manifested, Your Majesty. Conception has occurred. This pregnancy will progress faster than normal, perhaps 8 months instead of 9. The true mate connection accelerates everything." He did not need to say more. They both knew what this meant. The bond was real, complete, and with each passing day, it grew stronger, weaving Alaric and Elara together in ways that transcended simple political arrangement. "Does she know?" "Not yet. I wanted to inform you first." Alaric stood at the window of his chambers, watching snow fall over the courtyard where Elara walked each morning. Even from this distance, he could feel her through the bond, a constant presence at the edge of his awareness. Her emotions were muted, carefully controlled, but he caught flashes, determination, uncertainty, and underneath everything, a growing attachment she was fighting hard to deny. "Tell her," Alaric said. "She deserves to know." "And Corvus?" "Yes, sire." "The other matter, the one we discussed. How much time do I actually have?" The physician's scent shifted to something that smelled like regret and clinical detachment, trying to mask each other. "The bond is sustaining you beyond what the cancer should allow. Without it, you would already be bedbound. The connection to Lady Elara is giving you strength you should not possess. But it is borrowed time. 3 months. Perhaps 4 if you are fortunate. The cancer is spreading too aggressively for even a true mate bond to stop. 4 months. And the child? Will be born before you die. That much I can promise. The accelerated pregnancy means she will deliver in approximately 7 months from now. You will live to see your heir." It was more than he deserved, less than he wanted, but it would have to be enough. When Corvus told Elara later that day, Alaric felt her reaction through the bond, even though he was 2 floors away in the council chambers. Shock, fear, then a fierce protective surge that made his own alpha nature respond with pride despite the distance between them. That evening she came to his study. She entered without knocking, her scent filling the room before he even looked up from the documents he was reviewing. Wild honeysuckle and steel. It had become as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. More familiar, perhaps, since the bond made it impossible to ignore. "We need to talk." Alaric set down his pen, giving her his full attention. She stood in the doorway, one hand unconsciously resting on her belly where new life was growing with impossible speed. "You know." "I know. Pregnant, already, after 1 night. True mates conceive easily. It is one of the markers." She walked into the room, moving to the window where she seemed to do her best thinking. Outside, the castle grounds stretched white and cold under evening light. "This changes things." "Does it?" "You know it does. A child makes this real. Not just a political arrangement, not just a bond we are both trying to pretend does not affect us. A child means legacy. It means I am tied to you and to Ironwood forever, whether you live 6 months or 6 years. I will not live 6 years, 4 months if I am fortunate." The physicians were clear. She turned to look at him, and for the first time since arriving at the castle, he saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not of him, of loss. "I can feel you dying." Through the bond. Some days your presence is strong. Other days, it is like trying to hold smoke, and every time it fades I feel this panic that I do not want to feel, that I have no right to feel. "You have every right." "No, I should be glad. You are my family's killer. Your death should bring me satisfaction. Instead, the bond makes me want to fight for every additional day you have. It makes me care about a man I am supposed to hate." That is the curse of true mates. We do not get to choose what we feel, only what we do about it. Elara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Tell me about Marcus, about my father. What was he really like?" This was the moment. the choice between comfortable lies and terrible truth. Alaric had been dreading it for 2 weeks, ever since Tiberius had shattered everything he thought he knew. He was brave, honorable. He saved my life once, in a battle on the southern border. Took a blade meant for me. I carried the debt of that for years. And then you killed him. Yes. Why? Alaric took a breath. The truth would hurt, but she deserved it more than he deserved peace. I was told he was a traitor, that he planned to assassinate me, that he had sold information to enemy kingdoms. The evidence was overwhelming. But it was fabricated, all of it. I learned this 2 weeks ago, just before you arrived. Tiberius told me. She went very still. Her scent spiked with something sharp and dangerous. Fabricated. By who? By the late queen, my wife, and by Tiberius himself. The silence that followed was deadly. Through the bond, Alaric felt her rage building like a storm, felt the Omega nature warring with the fury of someone who had just learned the full depth of injustice done to her family. Why? They saw Marcus as a threat. He was young, beloved, charismatic. They feared he would eventually try to take the throne. So they manufactured evidence and presented it to me, knowing exactly what I would do. And you believed them? Yes, without question. I trusted them. They were my wife and my oldest friend. And the evidence seemed irrefutable. Letters in his handwriting, financial records, witnesses. I did not question because I did not want to question. It was easier to believe in betrayal than to examine my own paranoia. Elara's scent had gone cold and sharp as winter steel. When she spoke, each word was carefully controlled. So my father died innocent. My mother died trying to protect me from a massacre based on lies. My family was destroyed because your wife was jealous and your friend was ambitious. Yes. And you want me to what? Forgive you? Accept that you were a victim too? No. I want you to know the truth. All of it. Because you are carrying my child, and because the bond gives you the right to know exactly who you are tied to. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for understanding. I was a fool. I trusted the wrong people. I made decisions based on fear rather than investigation. And an innocent man and his family paid the price. Through the bond, he felt her emotions churning, rage, grief, and underneath, something unexpected. Not forgiveness, but a kind of terrible understanding. Where is Tiberius now? In his estates. He has not been to court since he told me. Why? I think he is waiting to see what you will do, whether you will demand his execution, whether the bond is strong enough to prevent me from giving it to you. Elara walked to the desk, her movements precise and controlled, despite the storm he could feel through their connection. Here is what we are going to do. You will summon Tiberius back to court. You will make him confess publicly to the council. And then you will ask me, in front of everyone, what punishment is appropriate. And what will you say? I have not decided yet, but I will not let him hide in his estates while we build a future on the bones of his lies. Alaric felt something that might have been pride. This Omega, who should have been broken by circumstance, was instead claiming her power, demanding accountability, refusing to let the past be buried just because it was convenient. It will be done. Good. Now tell me about these reforms you promised. I want to see progress. What followed over the next weeks was a transformation of Ironwood that shocked even those who had lived through Alaric's most radical decisions. The council met in emergency session. Alaric stood before the assembled dukes with Elara at his side, not behind him, beside him, equal. The mate bond was visible to anyone with Alpha or Omega senses, a connection so strong it practically glowed. Duke Hadrian, oldest of the council, looked between them with an expression that mixed surprise and grudging respect. His alpha scent carried assessment rather than challenge. Your Majesty, we understand you have announcements. Several. First, Prince Demon is hereby removed from succession. This decree is absolute and cannot be challenged. The heir to Ironwood will be the child currently carried by my true mate, Lady Elara Moonshade Ironwood. The chamber erupted, voices overlapping in shock and protest. True mate? The daughter of a traitor? This is unprecedented! The succession cannot be changed so easily. Alaric let them shout, but when he spoke again, he used what remained of his alpha command voice. Not as strong as it once was, but still carrying enough authority to silence the room. Marcus Moonshade was not a traitor, he was innocent, and the person who can confirm this is Grand Duke Tiberius Ashford. Every eye turned to where Tiberius stood near the back of the chamber. The Duke's scent was carefully neutral, but Alaric could see the tension in his posture. Come forward, Tiberius. Tell them what you told me. For a moment, Alaric thought his oldest friend might refuse, might flee rather than confess to crimes that would cost him everything. But Tiberius had always been braver than that, even when his courage served terrible purposes. The Duke walked to the center of the chamber, his movements steady despite what was about to happen. 25 years ago, he began, his voice carrying clearly in the shocked silence, I helped fabricate evidence against Lord Marcus Moonshade. The late queen believed he was a threat to the throne. She asked me to create proof of treason. I agreed. We manufactured letters, financial records, and paid witnesses to testify against him. King Alaric acted on this evidence in good faith, but the evidence was false. Marcus Moonshade was innocent. The chamber exploded again. This time the shock was too profound for mere protest. Dukes were on their feet, sense flaring with rage and disbelief. This is treason! How many others were falsely accused? You destroyed a noble house based on lies! Alaric held up a hand for silence. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. Duke Tiberius has confessed to crimes that would normally warrant execution. However, I am not the only party wronged here. Lady Elara, as the last surviving member of House Moonshade, you have the right to demand justice. What is your judgment? Every eye turned to Elara. She stood tall despite her pregnancy, despite being an Omega surrounded by powerful alphas, despite every reason to be intimidated. Her scent was controlled, revealing nothing. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. Execution would be mercy. Duke Tiberius would die and escape the consequences of his actions. Instead, I demand this. All lands and titles held by House Ashford are forfeit. They will be redistributed to the families whose members were killed in the Moonshade massacre. Tiberius himself will live, but as a commoner. He will work in the rebuilding efforts for the territories destroyed by this kingdom's wars. He will spend whatever years he has left making amends with his hands and his labor rather than his lies and manipulation. The judgment was brilliant, harsh enough to satisfy justice, merciful enough to show strength rather than vindictiveness. The council members looked at her with new respect, their sense shifting to acknowledge her authority. Tiberius bowed his head in acceptance. It is a fair judgment, I accept. But before the guards could take him, Elara spoke again. However, there is one task I require of you first, before you lose your title and position. What task, my lady? You watched over me for 24 years, protected me from a distance, made sure I survived. Why? Tiberius met her eyes for the first time. His scent carried something that might have been genuine regret. Because I helped create the injustice that orphaned you. The least I could do was ensure you lived. It was inadequate penance, but it was all I had. Then here is your final task as Duke. Use your knowledge and your resources to help rebuild what was destroyed. Work with me, not as noble to Omega, but as two people trying to make something good from the ashes of our mistakes. Do this, and perhaps your commoner years will have purpose. It was masterful. She had transformed an enemy into an asset, punishment into partnership, all while maintaining the moral high ground. Alaric felt pride surge through the bond so strongly that he nearly staggered. The council session continued with the reforms Elara had demanded. One by one, Alaric announced changes that would reshape Ironwood. All prisoners of war will be released with provisions and safe passage. A fund for war widows will be established using 10% of the royal treasury. All debts incurred through war requisitions will be forgiven. Land seized during military campaigns will be returned where possible. With each decree, he felt his legacy transforming, not erased. The blood on his hands would never wash clean, but perhaps redirected towards something that honored the future rather than the past. When the session ended, Duke Hadrian approached them privately. Your Majesty, Lady Elara, what you are building here is remarkable, but you should know that not everyone will accept these changes peacefully. You speak of threats. I speak of reality. Prince Demon will not accept being disinherited, and there are factions who benefit from the old ways. They will resist. Let them resist, Elara said quietly. We will deal with each challenge as it comes. As they left the council chamber, Alaric felt her lean slightly against him. Through the bond, he sensed exhaustion. The pregnancy was taking more energy than she wanted to admit. You should rest. I will rest when the work is done. Stubborn, you are one to talk. They smiled at each other, a moment of shared humor in the midst of darkness. And in that moment, something shifted. The bond, already strong, deepened further. Not just connection, but partnership, understanding. That night, as they lay in their shared chambers, unable to sleep, Elara broke the silence. "Tell me about your wife, the one who started all of this." Alaric had avoided this conversation for weeks, but the bond demanded honesty. She was beautiful, intelligent, and deeply insecure. She saw threats everywhere, even where none existed. Marcus was not the first person she asked me to eliminate, but he was the one I should have questioned. "Did you love her?" "I thought I did. But what I loved was the idea of her, the perfect queen for a warrior king. I did not see who she actually was until it was too late. By then, she hated both me and herself for what we had become." "How did she die?" "She killed herself. Left a note saying she could not live with what we had done. I found her in the gardens. Even then, I did not understand what she meant. I thought she was being dramatic. It took years before I realized she was talking about Marcus and the others she had convinced me to destroy." "I am not her," Elara said quietly. "I know. I will not kill myself no matter how dark things become. I will not leave our child the way she left Damon. I know, and I am grateful for that more than I have words to express." She moved closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her through the bond and through the physical proximity. "This bond," she said, "it makes everything harder. I want to hate you. Some part of me still does, but I also understand you in ways that make hate impossible. I feel your regret, your determination to change, your fear of dying before you can make things right. How am I supposed to maintain anger when I can feel your heart breaking every day? You do not have to forgive me, I know, but the bond makes me want to, and that terrifies me." The crisis came in the 5th month of Elara's pregnancy. Alaric woke to the sound of steel on stone. The guards outside his door were dead, their throats cut before they could cry out. He smelled the assassins before he saw them. 3 men, professionals. Their scents deliberately masked with herbs and chemicals, but not well enough to fool an alpha's nose, even a dying one. He pulled Elara behind him, positioning his failing body between her and the door. Through the bond, she felt his fear and determination. The assassins entered. No wasted movement, no mercy. The first one moved for Elara. Alaric intercepted, taking a poisoned blade through his shoulder. Pain exploded through both of them, Elara gasping as the bond transmitted his agony directly into her nervous system. The second assassin circled. Alaric tried to turn, but his dying body betrayed him. Too slow, too weak. Then, Elara grabbed the fireplace poker and swung it with all the strength pregnancy hormones and protective fury could provide. It connected with the assassin's temple. The man dropped like a stone. The third assassin hesitated, clearly not expecting an Omega 5 months pregnant to fight back. That moment of hesitation was all Tiberius needed. The former Duke crashed through the window in an explosion of glass and winter air. He had been keeping watch, as Elara had asked him to do. Now he moved with the efficiency of someone who had been a warrior before he became a politician. He took down the third assassin with brutal precision. The first assassin, seeing his team neutralized, tried to flee. Tiberius threw a dagger that caught him in the leg. The man went down screaming. Silence descended. Broken glass. Blood. The blade still protruding from Alaric's shoulder. Through the bond, Elara felt everything he felt. The pain. The poison beginning to work through his system. The fear, not for himself but for her and the child. She moved to him with steady hands despite her terror. "Sit now." She pulled the blade out herself, quick and decisive. Alaric grunted, but made no other sound. She pressed cloth against the wound, her hands shaking, but her movements sure. "Tiberius, get the physician, now." "Already moving, my lady." As Corvus worked to extract the poison and stitch the wound, Tiberius questioned the captured assassins. They broke quickly, as hired killers usually did when they realized their employer had abandoned them. "Prince Demon hired us, paid in advance, promised safe passage out of the kingdom once the Omega was dead." Elara's scent went cold and deadly. "Where is he now?" "Fled to the southern border, has been gone 3 days. Tiberius looked at Alaric. "My people can track him." "Do it, but bring him back alive. He will answer for this." Over the next 2 days, the full scope of Demon's plot emerged. He had not acted alone. 2 council dukes had supported him, seeing Elara's reforms as weakness and her influence as dangerous. When the council was summoned again, the 2 traitorous dukes were brought in chains. Alaric stood before the assembly, his wounded shoulder bandaged, but his bearing still that of a king. "These men conspired to murder my mate and heir. The penalty is death." But again it was Elara who spoke. "Death is too simple. Strip their titles, confiscate their lands, send them to work in the mines they profited from. Let them spend their remaining years as the powerless people they exploited. The council agreed. The judgment was carried out. When Damon was finally brought back in chains 3 days later, Elara insisted on confronting him herself. They met in the same study where she had first agreed to this arrangement. Demon, once a prince, now wore the chains of a traitor. His alpha scent was corrupted by fear and rage. "You stole everything from me." Elara stood before him, 5 months pregnant, but with more authority than he had ever possessed. "I stole nothing. You threw away your birthright through weakness and cruelty, and when you could not accept responsibility for your own failure, you hired men to murder your father's mate and unborn sibling. You are not a prince, you are a coward." Demon lunged against his chains. The guards held him easily. "You will die, your bastard will die, and I will take back what is mine." Elara stepped closer, close enough that he could see her eyes clearly. "You will take nothing. You have lost everything. Your title, your inheritance, your father's love, and now you will lose your freedom." She turned to Alaric. "Send him to the northern mines. Let him work alongside the prisoners he once wanted to keep enslaved. Let him learn what it means to be powerless, and let him live long enough to see our daughter take the throne he could have inherited." It was done. As the guards dragged Demon away, he shouted one last time, "Father, please!" Alaric said nothing. There was nothing left to say. His son was gone, consumed by the same weakness and entitlement that had destroyed so many noble houses before. That night, lying in darkness, Elara spoke quietly. "Your son is still alive, in the northern territories, working in the mines. He will die there eventually, alone and forgotten. Does that bring you peace?" "No, but it is just, and sometimes justice is the best we can hope for." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "I felt it, when they attacked, through the bond. You were ready to die to protect me." "Yes." "Why? You are dying anyway." "Because dying to protect what matters is different from dying slowly of disease and regret. One has meaning. The other is just waste." "What matters, the child?"
"Yes, and you."
She was quiet for a long moment. "Say it plainly." Alaric turned to face her in the darkness. "I love you. I know it is impossible. I know you are my true mate through no choice of either of ours. I know I destroyed your family and have no right to your affection. But the bond has shown me who you are, your strength, your wisdom, your capacity for justice tempered with mercy. And I love you for all of it, not because I want to, but because I cannot help it." Elara's breath caught. Through the bond, he felt her emotions churning. "You foolish man. Do you think I would stay here, fight for your reforms, risk my life to protect your legacy if I felt nothing? The bond forced connection, yes, but what I chose to build from that connection was mine. I chose to see you as more than my family's killer. I chose to believe you could change, and I chose to love you despite every reason not to. Does that mean what I think it means? It means I love you too, not blindly, not forgetting what you did, but including all of it, the monster and the man, the tyrant and the king trying to be better. You are both, and I love both because pretending you are only one would be a lie." They kissed then, not for the first time, but with an intensity born of understanding and acceptance. Through the bond, their emotions merged and amplified. Love, fear, gratitude, determination to make whatever time remained actually matter. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying. "I am going to die soon," Alaric whispered. "The poison from the blade accelerated the cancer. The physicians give me 2 months, perhaps less. I know, I can feel it through the bond. Every day you fade a little more. I am sorry." "Do not be sorry. Just make it mean something. Make these last weeks count." "I will try. That is all I ask." They held each other in the darkness, 2 people bound by fate and choice, making what peace they could with the time running out. Outside, winter deepened. Inside, something precious and fragile was being nurtured. Whether it would survive beyond Alaric's death remained unknown, but for now it was enough. The 8th month of Elara's pregnancy arrived with snow so heavy it buried the castle gardens beneath 3 feet of white silence. Alaric watched it fall from the window of their shared chamber, his body so weak now that standing required leaning heavily on the window frame, his breath coming in labored gasps that no medicine could ease. The poison from the assassination attempt had accelerated everything. What should have been 4 months had collapsed to 6 weeks. His alpha scent was almost completely gone now, replaced by the smell of sickness and approaching death. Only the mate bond kept him conscious, kept him upright long enough to see Elara through to delivery. He had perhaps 2 weeks left, maybe less. The child would come before his death. The physicians had confirmed it. Elara's body, driven by the true mate bond and the urgency of her dying mate, was preparing for early labor. What should have taken 9 months would conclude in 8, a small mercy in the mathematics of time running out. Behind him, Elara stirred in bed. Even without turning, he felt her wake through the bond. The connection between them had grown so profound that they often shared dreams, felt each other's pain before symptoms manifested, knew the other's thoughts before words were spoken. It was intimacy beyond anything he had imagined possible. And it was destroying her slowly, preparing her nervous system for the agony that would come when he died, and the bond tore apart like a limb being severed. "You should rest," she said quietly. Her voice carried the exhaustion of late pregnancy and the constant drain of sustaining a dying mate through their connection. "I have been resting. I will rest permanently soon enough." She rose with difficulty, her belly enormous now. The child was active and strong, pressing against her ribs, making sleep nearly impossible. She moved to stand beside him at the window, one hand unconsciously rubbing the spot where tiny feet kicked. The council approved the final reforms yesterday: full citizenship for former prisoners, elected representation from the outer provinces. Tiberius has been working with the reconstruction efforts in the territories. Everything is in place. Everything we promised. Everything you promised. I merely helped. Alaric turned to look at her. Even exhausted, even heavy with child and bearing the weight of a dying mate bond, she was beautiful in ways that transcended physical appearance. She had become the queen Ironwood needed, the leader he had never been capable of being. "This kingdom will be yours soon. It will be our daughter's. I am merely keeping it safe until she is ready." The physicians confirmed it then, a girl. "Yes, I wanted to wait to tell you, to see the look on your face." Alaric felt emotion rise in his throat, sharp and undeniable. Through the bond, Elara felt it too, tears springing to her own eyes in sympathetic response. "A daughter. I want to name her Liana, after my mother." The gesture struck him silent. To name the child after the woman he had killed. It was forgiveness and remembrance woven together. A reminder that redemption did not erase history, but could perhaps transform it into something that served the future. "It is a beautiful name. She will be strong. The physicians say her vital signs are exceptional. Whatever this bond created between us, it made her stronger than either bloodline alone. She will be moonborn, they think. Born under the full moon to true mates, rare and powerful." Then something good came from this nightmare. Elara took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. The simple touch sent warmth through the bond, easing his pain for a moment. More than something, everything that matters came from this. "Do you mean that?" She met his eyes directly. Through the bond, he felt the absolute truth of what she was about to say. "When this began, I thought I could treat it as transaction. My body for my family's legacy. Use the bond for political power while keeping my heart separate. But true mate bonds do not allow that distance. The connection forced me to see you. All of you. The monster and the man. The tyrant and the king learning to be better. And in seeing you completely, in feeling your every regret and determination through our link, I found I could not maintain my hate. That is not the same as love. No. But it became love anyway. Not blind love, not love that forgets or excuses, but love that sees everything and chooses to remain. I love you, Alaric. I love you knowing exactly what you are and what you did. And when you die, it will destroy part of me. But I will carry that destruction as proof that even the worst beginnings can lead to something real." The words broke something in him. Tears came, unbidden and unstoppable. He had not cried since he was a child, had not allowed himself the luxury of grief or regret visible to others. But here, now, with death so close and this woman offering understanding instead of hate, he could not maintain the armor. Elara held him as he wept, her arms strong despite her condition, her voice soft as she whispered comfort through both words and the bond. "Let it out. You have carried this alone too long. I do not deserve your love." "Perhaps not, but I choose to give it anyway. That is what makes it love rather than obligation." When the tears finally subsided, Alaric spoke with the clarity that sometimes comes after emotional purging. "When I die, the bond will tear." The physicians explained it. Like losing part of yourself, the pain will be extraordinary. I know. I have felt it approaching. Every day you fade a little more, the bond stretches thinner. When it finally breaks, it will feel like dying myself. You need to promise me something. Elara pulled back to look at him. What? Promise me you will not let the pain destroy you. Promise me you will focus on Liana. She will need you more than I ever did. She will need a mother who is whole enough to raise her, to teach her, to love her without the shadow of grief making her cold. I promise. And promise me you will tell her about me. Not just the reformed king who tried to make amends, but all of it. The massacres, the wars, the murder of her grandfather. She needs to know what I was so she can choose to be better. So she understands that people are not their worst moments, but they are responsible for making amends for them. I will tell her everything, the good and the terrible. She will know exactly who her father was. Good. He paused, gathering strength for what came next. There is one more thing I need to say, one more truth before I lose the strength to speak it. Yes, I love you. Not because of the bond, though the bond made it impossible to hide from, but because of who you are, your strength, your wisdom, your capacity for justice tempered with mercy. These months with you have been the first time in my life I understood what it meant to be truly seen by another person and accepted anyway. You are my true mate, not just in biology, but in soul. And I am grateful beyond words that the universe gave me this, even if it came too late to change the fundamentals of who I was. Elara touched his face gently, her eyes bright with tears. You foolish, stubborn man. Do you think I would stand here, carry your child, fight for your reforms, hold you through pain if I felt nothing? I love you. I love you knowing you killed my father. I love you feeling your regret through the bond every single day. I love you watching you die and being unable to stop it. The bond forced connection, but what I built from that was my choice, and I chose you. They kissed then, with the intensity of a first kiss and a last kiss woven together, his hands trembling on her face, her hands gentle in his graying hair, the bond blazing between them so fiercely that for a moment the cancer and the pregnancy and the dying kingdom all fell away, leaving only two souls who had found each other in the wreckage. When they pulled apart, both were crying. I am going to miss you so much, Elara whispered. Not as much as I will miss you. You get to stay and watch her grow. I get only this, these moments, this knowing that I was here for you and that it mattered. It mattered more than you know. They held each other as the sun rose over the snow, two souls bound by fate and choice, stealing what moments remained. The labor began 2 weeks later, exactly as the physicians had predicted. Alaric woke to Elara's gasp of pain at dawn. Through the bond, he felt the contraction like a vice around his own abdomen. He was on his feet immediately despite weakness that made the room spin, calling for physicians and midwives with what remained of his alpha command voice. The birthing chamber was prepared quickly. Elara was moved there with Alaric refusing to leave her side. He held her hand through the first contractions, feeling every wave of pain as if it were his own. The labor progressed for hours. Morning became afternoon. Afternoon became evening. The physicians looked increasingly worried as Elara's strength began to fail. Through the bond, Alaric felt her exhaustion growing, felt her body struggling with the accelerated pregnancy and the constant drain of maintaining their connection. One of the senior midwives pulled the physician aside. Alaric heard them anyway. The baby is positioned wrong. Labor is taking too long. Lady Elara is weakening rapidly. If this continues, we may lose both of them. Can you turn the baby? We tried. It is not working. Her body is too exhausted. Then what are our options? Surgical extraction. We can save the child, but the trauma will almost certainly kill the mother. Alaric felt ice flood his veins. His alpha nature, even dying, surged with protective fury. No. He crossed to them in 3 strides, moving with strength he should not have possessed. You will save them both. Sire, I do not think that is possible. We have to choose. Then you choose Elara. The kingdom needs its queen more than it needs another heir. I can die knowing I did one thing right if she survives. But the succession. The child was the entire point of the arrangement. The point was to give Ironwood a future. Elara is that future. The child matters because Elara loves her. But if we have to choose, we choose the mother. Choose. The physician looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Alaric's expression stopped him. As you command, Your Majesty. Alaric returned to Elara's side. She was barely conscious now, her face pale with exhaustion and pain. but she felt his presence through the bond and opened her eyes. "The baby?" "Is fine. Strong. You are the one we are worried about." "Save her," Elara whispered. "If you have to choose, save Liana." "No." "Alaric, please. I did not endure all of this to have our daughter die because of my weakness." "You are not weak. You are carrying a child while sustaining a dying mate through a bond that should have killed you already. You are the strongest person I have ever known. Promise me, if they have to choose, they choose her." "I will promise no such thing. I choose you. I will always choose you." She tried to argue further, but another contraction cut her off, this one so powerful that Alaric felt his knees buckle from the sympathetic pain transmitted through their link. And then something shifted. The bond, already profound, suddenly intensified beyond anything they had experienced. It was not just emotional connection anymore, not just shared sensation. It was life force itself, flowing from Alaric into Elara through the invisible threads that tied them together. His cancer-ravaged body had little enough life left to give, but what remained, he gave freely, completely, without reservation or hesitation. Every ounce of strength, every spark of vitality, everything that kept him breathing flowed through the bond into Elara. The physicians gasped. Corvus, the bond specialist, stepped forward with wide eyes. The true mate bond is manifesting at full strength. He is sustaining her, giving her his life force directly. How long can he maintain it? Not long. Look at him. The cancer is ravaging what the bond is trying to give. He is burning himself out to keep her alive. If she can deliver in the next hour, both might survive. After that, he will have nothing left. "Then we work fast," the head midwife said grimly. Empowered by the influx of energy through the bond, Elara found strength she should not have possessed. Her contractions intensified but became more effective. The baby shifted position. Color returned to her face as Alaric grew paler, his body visibly weakening as he poured everything into her. Finally, as the sun set outside the windows, filling the room with crimson light, Liana was born. Her cry was immediate and furious, a sound of life so pure and strong that it seemed to push back against the death gathering in the corners of the room. She was perfect, tiny but healthy, dark hair, eyes that would be green like her mother's. And when the midwife placed her on Elara's chest, the bond between mother and daughter was instantaneous and beautiful. Alaric, still channeling what little remained of his life through the mate bond, looked at his daughter and felt wonder beyond words. She was everything, the future, the proof that even his darkest sins could birth something worth protecting. "Hello, little one," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I am your father, and I love you more than I have words to express." Liana's eyes found his face. For a moment, recognition seemed to flash there. Perhaps the mate bond carried traces of him to her. Perhaps she simply knew. She made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like acknowledgement. Elara, exhausted but alive, smiled through tears. "She has your eyes, the determination in them. Poor child. She deserves better than to inherit my stubbornness." "She has better. She has both of us in her. The strength of Moonshade and the determination of Ironwood. She will be extraordinary." Alaric felt the last of his energy draining. The bond had taken everything. His cancer-ravaged body was shutting down, systems failing one after another in rapid succession. The physicians were moving around him, trying to stabilize him, but he waved them off with trembling hands. "Let me hold her, just once." They placed Liana in his arms with infinite care. She was so light, so impossibly small, and yet through the fading edges of the bond, he could feel her strength. This child would be everything he had failed to be. Wise, just, merciful, without being weak. He looked at Elara. "Thank you. For her. For fighting to bring her into this world, for giving me this moment. You gave me everything for her. I felt it through the bond. You burned yourself out to keep me alive. It was worth it, every second, every ounce of pain, worth it to see her, to see you both safe." The room was growing dimmer, or perhaps that was just his vision failing. He handed Liana back to Elara, their fingers touching one last time. The bond pulsed between them, fraying now, beginning to tear as his life slipped away. "Be strong, my love, for her, for the kingdom, for yourself." "I will, I promise." "Tell her when she is old enough. Tell her that her father's greatest achievement was not conquest or power. It was earning the love of her mother. Everything else was just noise. I will tell her, every day. She will know she was loved." Alaric felt the bond beginning its final dissolution. The connection that had sustained them both was unraveling, as death finally claimed what it had been owed for months. He tried to shield Elara from the worst of it, to take the pain of severing into himself, but there was only so much control left to him. She felt it anyway. Her gasp of agony made every person in the room flinch. It was not physical pain. It was the soul-deep anguish of losing half of yourself, of feeling the person you love most torn away, while still being able to feel their presence fading. "Alaric!" she sobbed, clutching Lyanna to her chest. "I am here. I am always here. The bond may break, but the love does not. Remember that. Do not leave me. I have to. But you will not be alone. You have her, and you have strength enough for both of you. I love you, and I love you. More than life, more than redemption, more than anything I ever conquered or built or destroyed. You are my true mate, my salvation, my reason for everything that mattered." The bond tore. Elara screamed, a sound of such pure anguish that it echoed through the entire castle. Servants 3 floors away felt their hearts clench. Guards in distant towers found tears on their faces without knowing why. She felt it like every nerve ending catching fire simultaneously, like the world itself splitting apart, like losing not just Alaric but half of her own soul, torn away and cast into darkness. Alaric felt it too, but for him it was different. The pain was there, yes, but also release. The cancer, the guilt, the weight of 40 years of sin, all of it falling away like chains being struck off. And in that final moment, as the bond severed completely and his heart stopped, he felt something unexpected. Peace. He saw Marcus Moonshade standing in light that had no source. The man looked as he had in life, strong and proud and unburdened by the death that had been done to him. "You killed me," Marcus said. "Not accusation, just fact. I know. You destroyed my family. I know. And you want forgiveness?" "No, I want nothing. I have no right to ask for anything." Marcus studied him for a long moment. "My daughter loved you. That must count for something. She loved who I became, not what I was. Is there a difference?" "I do not know." Marcus smiled slightly. "Take care of her, my granddaughter, from wherever you end up. Make sure she knows her grandfather was innocent, that his blood runs pure in her veins." "I will, I swear it." "Then go. Your time here is done. You did better at the end than I expected." Was it enough? The question hung in the light. Marcus considered it. Enough for what? To erase your crimes? No. But enough to matter? To make your death mean something? Yes. You gave my daughter a kingdom. You gave my granddaughter a future. You transformed evil into possibility. That is more than most men accomplish in lifetimes longer than yours. The light grew brighter. Alaric felt himself dissolving into it, becoming part of something larger than individual consciousness. His last thought was of Elara and Lyanna, together, alive, the future he had helped create through the last honest act of his life. Then there was nothing. In the birthing chamber, the physicians pronounced Alpha King Alaric Ironwood dead. Elara held Lyanna close, tears streaming down her face, feeling the emptiness where the bond had been like a wound that would never fully heal. The absence was physical, crushing, a hole in her chest where Alaric's presence had lived for months. But through her grief, she felt something else, his final gift through the bond before it broke. Strength, determination, the absolute certainty that she could survive this and raise their daughter to be everything they had hoped. She would endure. She would raise Lyanna. She would rule as he had asked. And she would make sure that Alaric Ironwood was remembered not just as a conqueror, but as a man who learned to love something more than power. The funeral was held 3 days later. All of Ironwood came to pay respects, not because they loved Alaric. Many still carried scars from his wars, but they came because he had changed, because the reforms had mattered, because he had chosen to die trying to be better. Elara stood at the front of the ceremony, holding Lyanna, watching as they lowered Alaric's body into the earth beside the memorial she had raised for her parents. Together in death as they never were in life. The symmetry felt right. Duke Hadrian approached after the burial. "Your Majesty, the council awaits your direction." It was the first time anyone had called her that officially. "Your Majesty, not royal consort, not lady, queen." Elara straightened despite exhaustion and grief. "Tell them we convene tomorrow. We have much work ahead." "And Princess Lyanna?" "Will attend council when she is old enough. Until then, I rule in her name with full authority as her mother and regent. Any who question that can bring their concerns directly to me." "As you command, Your Majesty." The months that followed were harder than anything Elara had endured. She grieved while governing. She woke each morning feeling the absence of the bond like phantom pain. She looked for Alaric in empty hallways. She turned to share thoughts with him before remembering he was gone. But she did not break. She had promised him strength, and she kept that promise. The reforms continued. The council, seeing her determination and competence, fell in line. Tiberius, working as a commoner in the reconstruction efforts, became an unexpected ally. His penance took the form of genuine service, and slowly, grudgingly, Elara found herself forgiving him. Not for Alaric's sake, but because holding on to hate accomplished nothing except poisoning the future. Lyanna grew rapidly, healthy and strong. By 6 months, she was already showing signs of extraordinary awareness. The physicians confirmed she was indeed moonborn, born to true mates, rare and powerful. But more importantly, she was loved. Elara made sure of that every day. 1 year after Alaric's death, Elara made a pilgrimage to his grave. The marker was simple stone, inscribed with words she had chosen over the protests of those who thought it too humble for a king. Here lies Alaric Ironwood. He conquered kingdoms and lost himself. He found love and became human. He died giving life to those who deserved it more. Elara placed a single white rose on the grave, then sat beside it with Lyanna in her arms. The baby was 1 year old now, curious and active. "Your father wanted so badly to see you grow," Elara said quietly. "He wanted to teach you, to watch you become the queen you are destined to be. He gave everything, including his life, to make sure you survived. I hope you will understand that when you are old enough." Lyanna reached out, tiny hands touching the gravestone as if she could feel something there. Elara smiled through tears. "He loved you absolutely. You need to know that. Whatever else I tell you about him, and I will tell you everything, both good and terrible, you need to know you were loved from the moment you existed." 18 years later. The coronation of Queen Lyanna Moonshade Ironwood was attended by representatives from all 12 kingdoms. They came not as conquered territories, but as allies, brought together by 18 years of reforms and diplomatic work. Lyanna stood before the assembled crowd, 18 years old and already showing the wisdom that would define her reign. She wore a crown that blended symbols of both bloodlines, Moonshade and Ironwood, unity from division. Elara watched from the side, no longer queen but queen mother, her role transitioning as it should. She had ruled well, the kingdom prospered, the people thrived, but this was Lyanna's time now. As the crown was placed on her daughter's head, Elara felt something strange. For just a moment, the absence where the mate bond had been seemed to warm, not real, just memory, but comforting nonetheless. Afterward, Lyanna found her mother in the gardens. "You were thinking of him, always. Tell me again about the night I was born." Elara had told this story 100 times, but she told it again because it mattered. "He gave everything for you, used the mate bond to sustain me when I was failing. It killed him faster than the cancer would have. But you survived, and to him that was worth any price." Lyanna was quiet for a moment. "Do you think he would be proud of me?" "I know he would. You are everything he hoped, strong, wise, compassionate. You have his determination and my patience. You are the best of both bloodlines. And the worst? The stubbornness. Definitely the stubbornness." They laughed together, mother and daughter, in gardens that had once been battlefields, but now bloomed with peace. "I want to visit his grave," Lyanna said. "Will you come with me?" "Of course." They walked together through grounds that had been transformed over 18 years. Where there had been military parade grounds, there were now schools. Where there had been armories, there were now hospitals. At the grave, Lyanna knelt, placing her hand on the stone. "Hello, Father. I wish I had known you. Mother speaks of you often. I understand what you did, the terrible things and the good things. I wanted you to know that I forgive you for the terrible, not because you deserve forgiveness, but because Mother taught me that holding on to anger for things that happened before I was born serves no purpose except to poison the future. And I honor you for the good, for choosing to change, for loving Mother, for giving your life so I could have mine." She paused. "I promise I will be a better ruler than you were, but I will never forget that I can only be better because you showed me what mistakes look like. That is a gift too, the gift of learning from others' pain." Elara placed her hand on Lyanna's shoulder. "He hears you. Do you believe that?" "I choose to believe it, and sometimes choosing belief is all we can do." They stood together in the quiet cemetery, 3 generations connected by blood and love and choices made in impossible circumstances. Elara thought about the first time she had met Alaric, how much had changed, how much pain, how much growth, how much love found in the most unlikely place. Was it worth it? She asked herself that question often. The answer was always the same. Yes, every moment of pain, every tear, every loss. Worth it for Liana. Worth it for the kingdom they had transformed together. Worth it for the impossible love they had found in the wreckage of everything that came before. Some debts could never be repaid, but they could be transformed. From blood to love, from war to peace, from a dying king's last breath to a daughter's first reign. That was the debt they owed the future, to be better than they were. And looking at Liana, strong and wise and ready to lead, Elara knew they had paid it in full. Behind them, snow began to fall, the first of the season. Winter was coming again. But this time it would be different. This time they were ready. This time love had won.